Holidays, vacation days, they're always in really short supply, aren't they? You don't want to waste any of yours by going to the wrong place. And taking a trip is a big financial investment. So you want to make sure that you're making really good decisions and that you are making the most of your hard-earned money. So in this video, I am going to be looking at 8 things never to do when you are choosing your holiday destination. If you're new here to the channel, a very warm welcome to you. If you're a regular viewer, welcome back. You usually find me here sharing lots of home decor, tips and tricks and home styling and seasonal styling. But what you might not know about me is that for over 30 years I worked in the travel industry. Travel is a big passion of mine. I take lots of trips whenever I can, and in my years I have helped a fair few number of people choose the right destination for their trip, for their holiday, for their vacation. So without further ado, let's jump into the first thing on my list. And number 1 on my list is never take advice from people who don't holiday like you do. Talk to your friends, talk to your work colleagues, talk to people at parties. You will get a feel for the kind of holiday that they like and make a decision about whether they seem to holiday like you or not. Do they have similar likes, similar dislikes? Do they seem to be on a similar kind of budget, to you? Do they like to cruise like you do? Do they prefer maybe all-inclusive resorts like you do? Do they like to take, sunshine trips where you're just lying on a beach? Or like you, do they like to explore new cities? So gather your travel tribe, work out who those people are in your circles that seem to travel the way you do, and take their recommendations. Let's think about the scenario where you are hearing about your friend's 20-year-old student trip to this amazing new resort that they've discovered. Are you likely to take advice from them? They've gone there with a bunch of their school friends, college friends, university friends, whatever that might be. Are they likely to be holidaying in the same way as you are? So it's all about finding your travel tribe and taking advice from them. If you've ever joined a broad travel Facebook group, like say one for folks who like to cruise, you'll come across vastly varying opinions, really highlighting the huge differences in what we all consider to be a good and a bad experience. Our hugely different expectations, available budgets, tastes, etc. account for this, of course. So the trick is to only take advice around destinations, resorts, cruise lines, cruise ships from someone you reckon has similar expectations and taste to you. When you're looking at travel review sites, the likes of TripAdvisor, that type of thing, take a minute to have a little dig into the profile of the people whose reviews you are reading. Where else do they go? What other types of trips and holidays do they take? Do they seem like the kind of people that take similar trips to you? Because if they are taking vastly different holidays to very different destinations, what they consider to be, an amazing destination may not resonate with you. For example, it might be obvious that their norm is a busy, busy beach resort, and they might review somewhere as being way too quiet and totally lacking in any atmosphere. Maybe another reviewer will describe it as having a great, relaxed and laid-back feel. Digging into that reviewer's profile might tell you that they're a lot more like you in the types of places they like to stay. So whose advice are you going to take? Second on my list of things never to do when choosing your holiday destination is to never take online reviews at face value. There's so many fake reviews out there. Have a look at trends. If a particular hotel, say, seems to have a whole bunch of really positive reviews, and then you find one negative review, have a look at that reviewer. Similarly, if you find that there's quite a lot of negative reviews and then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of positive reviews, you can usually spot a fake reviewer. It is normally a profile where the profile picture is something, generic. The name is usually like a bunch of, kind of letters and numbers. Quite often, the review that you're reading is the only review that that person has ever posted. and it will quite often not give really specific information about the hotel. It will just be a very kind of generic description that could apply to 100 hotels. So just take a minute to have a look at those reviews and dig into it a little bit. Just don't, never take what you're seeing immediately at face value. The other thing I would say about these kind of reviews is, you might see something, again, there might be a trend where most of the reviews are really positive, and then there's this one really negative review. And when you look at it closely, you realize that there has been a very specific thing that has happened, a specific incident or a specific situation that has happened to this particular reviewer. And while it's really unfortunate maybe that it happened to them, it's possibly not very likely that it is going to happen to you. So never take these types of reviews at face value. Always have a little bit of a look, have a dig around, and see if you can just get a bit more information, and check, first of all, that they are not fake reviews, and then just look at the overall trend. Number 3 on my list of things never to do when you are choosing your holiday destination is never ignore government health advisories or general government, travel advisories to the destination that you are considering. Unfortunately, we live in a quickly changing political climate, and you really need to keep on top of those government sites and be checking for travel advisories. Apart from potentially traveling to somewhere that is not safe, you could also be invalidating your travel insurance, because if you travel against government advice, there's a good chance that your travel insurance will not be valid. So it's really important to take all of that into consideration at the point that you are choosing your destination. And if you're booking quite far in advance, keep an eye on it in the run up. But it's definitely something just to have a quick check of, especially if it's somewhere a bit more unusual. Make sure that you never choose a destination that you would be traveling against government advice. Number 4 on my list is to never overlook the passport and visa requirements of that destination that you are planning to travel to. Before you click that button to book, before you go ahead with it, just make sure that your passport is going to be valid, and that you're not landing yourself in a situation where perhaps you suddenly find out that you need a visa to travel to that country. Maybe it's a last minute trip, and the particular country that you're going to either doesn't do online visa applications, so you need to submit it in writing. Maybe you're faced with 2 potential holiday spots. One you need a visa and one you don't, and you've got limited time available. So just make sure that you check all that. The other thing to check is your passport expiry date. There are a lot of countries now that require you to have, say, 6 months validity on your passport beyond the date that you exit that country. So again, maybe it's a choice for you between country A and country B, and you don't have that length of date before your passport expires, and you might not have time to renew your passport. So you need to be taking that all into account. So never choose your destination until you've looked at what the passport and visa requirements of that country are. Number 5 on my list is to never overlook cultural fit and local customs or local laws. Now, you might not agree with the laws or the customs of that country, but is it something that you can overlook and still enjoy your holiday, or is it a deal breaker for you? You need to have a look at these and decide whether you and your travel companion or travel companions can just relax and enjoy yourself and still have the kind of holiday that you want, or are local laws going to stop you from doing this? Or are local customs just not aligned with your core values, in which case you just do not want to visit that country? Because ignoring them could have some really dire consequences if you inadvertently break a law or don't comply with local customs when you are there. So you really need to make sure that you are aware of them. But yeah, the message is just never ignore them. Take them into account when you're choosing your holiday destination. Number 6 on my list is never choose solely based on current trends. And what I mean by that is you quite often will get a city that everybody seems to be going to. Everybody you talk to has either been, they're going, they're planning a trip there. And so you might just think, oh, right, okay, I'm just going to jump on and book that. But find out why it's trending. What is it about that place that is behind everybody traveling to it? You might be the kind of person that likes a quiet, laid back place with lots of culture, and suddenly the city seems to be the in place that everybody's going to. And what you don't realise is the reason that everybody's going to it or appears to be going to it is because it is super budget friendly and it's actually attracting a whole lot of stag parties, hen parties, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, that type of thing. So you might visit this big trending city and find that it is completely the opposite of the kind of place that you would normally like to go to. So never book just based on trend. Dig into it, find out why it is a trend, and then make your own decision about whether it's the right place for you or not. Number 7 on my list is to never overlook seasonal shifts. And what I mean by that is it might be perfectly obvious to you that if you are in the northern hemisphere and you're booking a trip in your summer to go to the southern hemisphere, then it's going to be winter when you get there. That might be fairly straightforward. But what might be less obvious are things like, that Caribbean cruise for August, September is so inexpensive, it's so cheap because what you're not realizing is it's the middle of hurricane season. And so there's a pretty good chance that your trip might have to be cancelled, or, you might not get to go to all the ports that are on the itinerary because there are hurricanes in particular areas. So it can potentially cause quite a lot of disruption to your trip. Or maybe you are going to a trip, you're going on a trip to Japan in April time, middle of cherry blossom season. Yes, it's a beautiful time to visit, but it's actually probably the most expensive and the most crowded time to visit. So never overlook that when you are picking your destination. If you have got a particular time of year that you need to travel, then have a look at what it is like to travel to that destination at that time of year, and just make sure that you are fully aware of what it's going to be like, and that you have clear expectations about it, and that your expectations are going to be met, and that you're not going to be faced with any real surprises when you get there. Find out, maybe if it is going to be low season, what does low season actually mean? Is it just that things are a lot quieter, or does it mean that all the amenities, the restaurants, the cafes are actually closed and shut up for the season? So never ignore those seasonal shifts, and just make sure that you do your research in relation to those before you choose your destination. And number 8 on my list, and this is quite a big one that I'm going to then break down into another list. Number 8 on the list is to never forget to include all expenses, all potential expenses, in relation to the destination that you are choosing before you make that final decision. And also, never forget to include all expenses when you're comparing two trips. So on, first glance, you might see this trip somewhere and you think that's an amazing deal. That looks really great. Compared, this might be trip A compared to trip B. But when you actually dig into it and you look at what is included in both trips, then it might not be such a great deal. And you need to think about all of the following items that I'm going to go through and decide, is this an expense you're going to have on this trip or not, to, make a really informed choice. So let's run through all the things that could potentially trip you up in relation to the kind of budget needed for a trip. And this is something you never want to overlook. So number 1 is this trip that you're comparing, or if you're comparing 2 or 3 trips, where are they from? Is it a local departure point, a local airport, rail station? What are going to be your costs involved in getting to the airport? Is there airport parking involved? Can you take a taxi? Do you need to go to the departure point the night before and stay overnight? Are there going to be expenses involved with that? So you need to take all of these things into account when you're comparing 2 trips. Second thing is Is baggage included in your airfare if you're flying somewhere? Some airlines include it, some don't. The budget carriers don't usually, and the budget carriers can vary hugely in what they charge for it. So you want to make sure that you've taken that into account. Are pre-booking seats included? Some of the bigger carriers you might, or depending on the booking class, you might be able to pre-book your seats at no extra charge. Others you need to. It's a big one if you're traveling together with a family group. You are definitely going to want to sit together. So make sure you take the cost of choosing your seats in advance into account. Next, are meals on a flight included in the price if it's a slightly longer flight, or even on a shorter flight? We recently flew and it was kind of over lunchtime, so we thought we'll take a little picnic on the flight with us. We went to the just a local kind of coffee bar in the airport and bought a picnic to take on board, and wow, was that expensive. So you've got to take all that into account. Are airport transfers once you get to your destination, is that included? Package trips will quite often include a transfer from the airport to your hotel, but if you've booked everything separately, then that might not be the case. So are you going to be taking a taxi? How much roughly is that going to cost? If you're comparing two different, say, holiday hotels, it might be that one is much nearer the airport and one is much further away, and that could make a huge difference to the overall cost of your trip. Does the location that you're booking to require you to hire a car in order to get the most out of your holiday? Maybe you're booking a destination that's quite remote, and so you think, actually, we're going to be a bit stuck if we don't have a car. Or maybe you're comparing two different trips where one, you might want to have a car so that you can tour around a little bit, comparing the cost of hiring a car and doing it yourself compared to booking excursions. So take the car hire costs into consideration as well. And then, of course, if you hire a car at your destination, you also need to find out if your hotel is going to charge you to park that car while you're there, and take all of that into account as well. Are there any additional resort fees or local taxes to be paid? Usually when you book a package trip, that's all been taken care of by the tour operator. But if you're booking everything separately, then you might find that you have to pay these charges, and quite often they will just be payable in local currency at the hotel. So you need to find out, are there resort fees and local taxes to be paid? Are tips and gratuities included? Again, that's a big one. Quite often on cruise packages, you'll find that you can prepay all of those in advance. Different countries have very, very different ideas about what is expected as far as gratuities are concerned. In a lot of countries, gratuities just aren't a thing. People are just not expected to leave any tips, whereas in other countries it can be as much as 20%. So if you're looking at, say, trips to two different countries, then have a look at what their customs and traditions are as far as tipping is concerned. Again, that could make a massive difference to your overall budget. Are Wi-Fi charges going to be included? That's going to be a big one for families traveling with teens. You're definitely going to want to make sure that you've got Wi-Fi, whether it's included or whether you're going to have to pay for it. And if you are going to pay for it, what are the charges? Make sure that you understand all of that when you're choosing your destination, or at least when you're comparing two destinations. Make sure that you've taken that into account when you're comparing the overall cost. What about the cost of activities when you are there? A lot of resorts will say that they include things like tennis racket hire, bike hire, and a lot of hotels, while they might have those facilities available, there is going to be an additional charge for it. Never just make the assumption that all of that is included. Make sure that you dig a bit deeper, find out what's included, and then take that into account, especially, as I say, if you're comparing one destination with another. You need to know, are you comparing like for like? The other thing to think about when you are booking the destination is it a destination where day trips and excursions are really going to be needed to make the most out of that destination? You know, it might just be that you're looking to just go and flop on a beach for a week, then you're probably not going to be doing lots of day trips. But let's say you're comparing that with another trip where actually, to get the most out of that trip, there's a lot to see and do, and it is going to require you to book day trips, excursions, maybe hire a car to actually get the most out of that place. It might also be, what sort of way do you like to holiday? So do you want to actually immerse yourself in everything? Do you need to experience everything? So let's say you're taking a trip to Paris. Is it going to be enough for you to walk around the Eiffel Tower, take it all in, walk up a little bit of the kind of free stage? Or are you going to have to buy tickets and be able to say that you've been all the way to the top to really feel like you've made the most out of it? So make sure that you don't overlook all those charges and that you take all of that into account. The other budget related thing to never overlook is what the exchange rate is in the country that you're planning to visit. So let's say that you are thinking about two different destinations. One, the exchange rate is actually really favourable for you, and another destination, the exchange rate is actually not very great. So never overlook that in your planning stages when you're picking that destination, especially in the context of this where you're comparing trip A with trip B. You want to understand, how much you're going to get for your own currency and how much that is going to impact how much you're going to have to spend when you're there. The other thing not to overlook when you are comparing destinations to make your right choice for you is to remember that your travel insurance may not cover all activities. So let's say you are picking a destination where there are maybe a few more what would be considered dangerous activities. So let's say you're picking between a ski holiday and a cultural city break. If you're going to go skiing, you need to make sure that your travel insurance covers you for that activity. Or maybe it's a trip that involves water sports or whitewater rafting. These are all the kind of things that when you have a good look at your travel policy, suddenly you find that it's not actually included and that you need to spend more to upgrade your policy to cover you. So these are things that you would want to consider when you're choosing your destination. Don't overlook it because you might suddenly find you've got an expense that you didn't budget for, or worse still, that you travel somewhere and do something that you're not actually insured for. And the last thing to kind of consider on this one is, do you need a visa for the destination that you're traveling to? I know we talked about in the, it was one of my earlier points is to, never book somewhere that you suddenly then find that you need a visa for. But in this context where you are comparing maybe trip A with trip B, maybe country A doesn't require you to have a visa, country B does require you to have a visa. And on investigating, you find out that that visa is going to cost you £50 or $50 a head, and you're a family or a group of 5 or 6. So that could make a significant impact to your budget. When you are choosing your destination, these are all the kind of budget related things that you need to make sure that you've got a complete understanding of in order to make a good choice on, say, destination A over destination B. You need to be taking all of these things into account. So I hope that's been really useful for you. 8 things never to do when you are picking your next holiday destination, whether that's the country, the hotel, the resort, the city. 8 things to really consider. And I'm going to pop a video on here and link you to one. It's a review that I did for a recent holiday resort that I stayed in, and you can decide if you and I like to holiday in the same way. So that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.